What's going on, everybody? It is not a penguin, and I was never a big reader in high school. In fact, I didn't really start buying books on my own until I was about 20 years old. And like a lot of people, I honestly thought reading was kind of boring. But once I started picking up books that I was actually interested in, I realized they weren't just entertaining, they gave me ideas I could actually apply to my own life. Some completely changed the way I think about money, others made me great at talking to people, staying disciplined, or thinking critically, or even understanding how to invest for the future. So today, I want to go over 5 books that had the biggest impact on me so far in my 20s, and we're going to talk about 5 different books: The Millionaire Next Door, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Can't Hurt Me, All the Worst People, The Little Book About Common Sense Investing. Each one of these helped me in a completely different area of my life, and for each book, I'm going to explain what it's about, the biggest questions it answers, and most importantly, how I've actually applied those lessons in my own life. And yes, there will be timestamps down below in the description if you want to jump to a specific book. But with all that being said, let's get into it. The first book on this list is The Millionaire Next Door. And if I had to pick one book that completely changed how I look at money, it would be this one. Before I read it, I thought I had the same idea of a millionaire that most people do. You picture someone driving a Lamborghini, living in a big house, wearing expensive watches, the whole package. And honestly, that's what social media pushes to us every single day. But this book asks a really interesting question. What if the people who actually have the most money don't look rich at all? And that's exactly what the authors wanted to figure out. Instead of looking at celebrities or influencers, they studied actual millionaires across America, 1,000 of them to be exact. And they all did surveys and interviews and everything in between. And what they found in those interviews was almost the complete opposite of what most people expect. A huge number of millionaires drove normal cars like a Honda Civic. Many lived in average neighborhoods. Some had lived in the same house for decades. They weren't spending every paycheck trying to impress everyone around them. They were quietly building wealth while almost nobody noticed. And that leads to probably the biggest lesson I took away from this book. There is a massive difference between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy. If someone buys a brand new luxury car on a 7-year loan, has a mortgage they can barely afford, and finances every vacation and gadget they own, they might look rich. But if another person drives a 10-year-old Toyota, invests a portion of their paycheck, and avoids unnecessary debt and consistently lives below their means, who's actually building wealth? The second person by far. And that's what this book is trying to accomplish and help people realize. We live in a culture where everyone wants the appearance of success before they've actually achieved it. Social media makes it even worse when you're constantly comparing yourself to everyone else's highlight reels. You see someone your age with a brand new truck or a Rolex, and your first thought is, man, they're doing way better than I am. Like, what am I doing wrong? But what you don't see is the monthly payment, their credit card debt. You don't see that they're investing anything at all. The book taught me that wealth isn't what people see, wealth is what people don't see. It's the money sitting in your retirement account, the investments quietly growing year over year. It's having an emergency fund instead of living paycheck to paycheck. It's having options and not always being stranded on a lifeboat. One thing that really stuck with me is the idea that every dollar you spend today is a dollar that's not working for you in your future. They often refer to dollar bills in this book as little employees, and the more employees you have, the more money they will make you in the future, which is a good way to think about compounding. Now, that doesn't mean you should never enjoy your money or never buy something nice. Life is meant to be lived, but the question becomes, are you buying things because they genuinely improve your life or because you want other people to think you're successful? That question honestly made me rethink a lot of my own spending that I do. Instead of asking, can I afford this? I've started asking myself, what is this purchase costing my future? Like, what am I getting out of this? Do I really need this? Because if that money could have been invested and compounded for the next 20 or 30 years, then the true cost is much higher than the actual price tag you're paying. And that's really the message of this book. Building wealth usually isn't about making one massive financial decision that changes your life overnight, like choosing where you work. It's about making hundreds of small decisions every day over years, living below your means, investing consistently, and avoiding lifestyle inflation. And understanding that real wealth is often invisible. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but it works. And honestly, I think that's why this book had such a big impact on me. It completely changed how I look at people who seem rich and made me realize that the people who truly are wealthy often have no interest in proving it to anyone. All right, and the second book on my list is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And even though this book is written almost 90 years ago, it's honestly shocking how relevant it is still today. And when I first heard the title, I thought it sounded kind of manipulative, like it was going to teach you how to trick people into liking you or convince them to do what you want. But after reading it, I realized it's almost the complete opposite. The biggest question this book answers is, why do some people seem to make friends everywhere they go? We've all met someone like this. They walk into a room and within 10 minutes, it feels like they've known everyone for years. People enjoy talking to them. They're easy to trust, they're memorable. Most of us will look at people like that and think they're just naturally charismatic. But the author Carnegie argues that these people usually aren't doing anything magical at all. They're just genuinely interested in other people. And that sounds incredibly simple, like almost too simple. But think about the average conversation you have today. How many people are actually listening to what you have to say? Most people aren't. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. While you're talking, they're already thinking about what story they're going to tell next or what point they want to make. This book completely changed how I view conversations because it made me realize something. People don't necessarily remember what you said, they mostly remember how you made them feel, and that's the important part about this. One of the easiest ways to make someone enjoy talking to you isn't being the funniest person in the room, it's by making them feel important. It doesn't mean fake compliments or pretending to care. People can tell when you're being fake almost immediately. Like, you can't play that off. It means you have to be genuinely curious, ask questions, and actually listen to the answer instead of thinking about your next response. Just remember to stay engaged in the conversation that you're having. Remember the details they told you, remember their name, follow up with them later. Those little things make a massive difference because most people rarely experience someone giving them their full attention. And another lesson from this book that really stuck with me is something that sounds obvious but almost nobody practices. Don't argue just to win. I know it's probably a little bit different than what you hear nowadays, but think about how many arguments happen online all the time between politics, sports, video games, or anything else. Almost nobody's going to change their opinion because you embarrass them in the comment section. And in fact, when people feel attacked, they usually double down on what they already believe and just hold on to it even tighter. Carnegie talks about approaching disagreements with curiosity instead of trying to prove someone wrong, and ask why they think that way. Try to understand their perspective before trying to change it. Ironically, that's usually what makes people more willing to listen to your point of view. Now, for me personally, this book was especially valuable because I work in sales. Sales has a reputation about talking. All you're doing is talking to customers and people, making phone calls all day long. But honestly, the best salespeople I've met so far aren't the ones that talk the most. They're the ones who ask the best questions and the ones who listen to the answers. They understand what someone actually needs before they ever think about making a recommendation. And I realize that's not just true in sales. That's true in friendships, dating, networking, job interviews, literally any relationship you'll ever have in your life. And at the end of the day, everyone wants the same thing. They want to be respected, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel like they matter. And that's really what this book teaches. It's about becoming someone that other people genuinely enjoy being around because you make them feel valued. And honestly, in a world where everyone's constantly looking down at their phone or waiting for their turn to talk, simply giving someone your full attention has become one of the rarest qualities you can have as an individual. All right, third book up on the list is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Now, chances are you've heard of David Goggins before. Like, there's no way you haven't heard of this guy or at least seen him on TikTok. He's known for doing these absolutely insane endurance challenges like running ultra marathons. He's a SEAL, and he's just pushing himself to the absolute limits of what most people can't even imagine. So when I first picked up the book, I honestly thought it was just going to be him telling his stories about how tough he was, but that's not what it is at all. One of the biggest questions this book answers is, how do you keep going when you don't feel like it? Because let's be honest, motivation is a terrible thing to rely on. Everyone feels motivated when they start something new. The first week of going to the gym is exciting. Starting a YouTube channel like this is exciting. Starting a new job, that's exciting. But eventually, that excitement wears off. The workouts get repetitive, the videos don't get many views, you have bad days at work, it's life. Things get boring, you get discouraged, and that's usually when people quit. One of the biggest ideas Goggins talks about this entire book is that successful people don't accomplish more because they're always motivated. They accomplish more because they keep showing up after the motivation is gone. And that's just the biggest mindset shift you'll get while reading this book. Instead of asking yourself, do I feel like doing this today? You'll start asking yourself, does it matter whether I feel like doing it today? Because most of the things that improve your life don't feel good in the moment. Going to the gym after a long day sucks. Studying while your friends are out doing something isn't fun at all. Working on a YouTube video for hours just to have it get like 10 views isn't always fun either, but here we are. But those are the moments that actually matter. Another concept in the book is taking accountability. It's really easy to blame other people or your circumstances when things aren't going the way you want them to. Maybe you had a rough childhood, maybe you didn't get the opportunity someone else had, maybe life just dealt you a bad hand. And those things are real, and they absolutely do make life harder. I'm not taking that away from you, but at some point you still have to ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? Like, how am I going to pick myself up from this situation and make it better? And that's just one of the lessons you get out of this book. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond to them. And I think that's a much more empowering way to look at life. For me personally, the book changed the way I approach consistency. I've been going to the gym for years now, and there's still plenty of days where I don't feel like going. And there's days where I'd rather just relax rather than spend hours scripting, recording, and editing a YouTube video. There are days where I'd rather make excuses than put in the work. But if I only worked when I felt motivated, I honestly don't think I'd make much progress at anything. The people who end up achieving big goals usually aren't superhuman. They're just willing to keep showing up on the days nobody else wants to. And that's just the main lesson from this book. It's about building the discipline to keep moving forward, because motivation comes and goes, and discipline is what carries you the rest of the way. And this book is a majority of him telling his own personal life stories and what he went through as a kid and growing up. And he's just reflecting on what he did after he turned, like, I want to say like 25 or 28, and what he did to reshape his life. So, but yeah, it's kind of just his life story all wrapped up into a book and him making motivation out of it. So if you're interested in that, it might be worth it for you. The fourth book on this list is All the Worst People by Phil Elwood. And this was honestly one of the most eye opening books I've ever read in my life. And this book tries to answer a question that has become a lot more important over the last few years. How do you know what information you can actually trust? We live in a world where almost anyone can publish anything they want online. Headlines are written to get clicks, videos are made to get views, algorithms reward outrage because outrage keeps people watching. And now with AI, we've got a point where images, videos, and even voices can be created that look incredibly real and are hard to distinguish from reality. So if all this information is constantly being thrown at us, how do we separate what's true from simply what's designed to grab our attention? And that's where this book really changed the way I think. One of the biggest lessons I took away is that almost every message has an incentive behind it. And sometimes that incentive was money, maybe it was politics, or maybe it was just simply attention. The author Phil worked for a PR team in New York and handled many high profile cases. And basically, he would try and represent their client in the best possible light on social media, in the news, etc. He basically just tried to twist the story to make it look good for his client. That doesn't automatically make the information you presented false, but it does mean it's worth asking a simple question. Why am I being shown this? Who's benefiting if I believe it? What information might be missing from this? Is this trying to inform me or make me react? Those are the questions I honestly didn't ask myself enough before reading this book. I think we've all had those moments where we read a headline, immediately believed it, and then found out later that the story was a lot more complicated than it first appeared. The internet nowadays moves so fast that most people will never even see the correction. They only remember the original headline. Another thing this book helped me realize is just how easy it is to stay inside your own bubble. Social media platforms learn what you like, and if you interact with certain types of content, they'll show you even more of it. And before long, it can feel like everyone agrees with you because you're only seeing opinions similar to your own. But the real world is a lot more complicated than that. This book made me much more comfortable saying, I don't know enough about this topic yet to have a decision. And honestly, I think that's something more people should be willing to say. We live in a culture where everyone feels pressure to have an opinion on everything immediately. But sometimes the smartest response is slowing down, looking at multiple sources, and realizing there's probably more to the story. And like I said earlier, that mindset has become even more important with AI nowadays. If something looks convincing online, that doesn't necessarily mean it's real. And I don't say that to make people paranoid. I say it because critical thinking is becoming one of the most valuable skills you can have. And at the end of the day, this book didn't teach me to distrust everything. It taught me to question more, to slow down before jumping to conclusions. I think if people approach the internet with that mindset, we'd all make better decisions, not just about the news we consume, but the world in general. And this book really does help you understand why we see the news we see and just the overall content and why it's presented to us in the ways that it is. All right, and for the fifth and final book on this list, it's The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle. I probably should have started the list with this one just because of how pertinent it is, and this is the one that could genuinely set you up for the future. The biggest question this book gets at is, how does the average person actually build wealth through investing? Because if you're anything like me, when I first got into investing, it's honestly overwhelming. Everyone online claims they have the next stock that's going to explode. You'll see videos of people saying the stock's going to 10x. Someone else tells you to buy crypto, and then another person says to trade options. And like after a while, you just don't know who to believe. This book cuts right through all that bullshit. John Bogle is the founder of Vanguard, one of the biggest financial firms ever. And instead of trying to beat the market, he says to just own the market. He is the grandfather of index investing. He literally invented it. All those people who you see buying the S&P 500 and these index funds, yeah, this is the guy who came up with that idea, and he wrote a book telling you how to do it for yourself. Instead of trying to guess which company is going to be the next Apple or Nvidia, Bogle argues that for most people, buying a low-cost index funds means you're investing in hundreds or maybe even thousands of companies at the same time. So instead of just betting on one company to succeed, you're betting on the entire economy. Now, does that sound exciting? Hell no. Is there any adrenaline, any get rich next month? No, that's also not true. And is this a shortcut? Also no. And I think that's why so many people ignore this advice. We naturally want the shortcut. We want to believe that there's a secret investment that nobody else knows about and we can just get rich quick. But one of the biggest lessons I took away from this book is that investing shouldn't be exciting. If your investment strategy feels like gambling, you're probably doing something wrong. The goal isn't to get rich as fast as possible. The goal is to consistently build wealth over decades. Another thing this book helped me with understand is the incredible power of compound growth. Imagine two people. One starts investing a little bit in their early 20s, and the other waits till about like 35 when they're making more money, got their house paid off, they're doing good. Even if the second person invests more every month, the first person, who was a 20-year-old investing lower amounts, often ends up with more money simply because they had more time. Time beats money in the market. Time is one of the biggest advantages you can have as an investor. And that's something I don't think enough people my age realize that are in their 20s. A lot of us think investing is just something you worry about after you made a lot of money, but it's actually the opposite. The earlier you start, even if it's with small amounts, the more powerful compound growth becomes. Now, I also want to be clear. This book isn't saying you can never own an individual stock or invest in other things. What it's saying is that if you don't know where to start, And honestly, a lot of people don't. A diversified, low cost index fund is an incredibly solid foundation to get started on. You don't have to watch the market every day, you don't have to panic every time prices go down, and you don't have to become a financial expert on many things overnight. You just need consistency. And I think this ties back to The Millionaire Next Door really well. Both books teach that wealth usually isn't built through flashy decisions, it's built through boring, consistent habits repeated over many years. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest themes across all the books in this video. There wasn't a single magic trick, there wasn't a secret that instantly changed my life overnight. Each one simply gave me a better way to think. How I view money, how I talk to people, how I approach discipline, how I consume information. And this last one changed how I invest in my future. And if you're someone like me who's trying to improve your life one step at a time, I genuinely think each one of these books has something valuable to offer. And if you've read any books that completely changed the way that you think, let me know down in the comments because I'm always looking for the next good book to read. And honestly, you guys probably have the best recommendations. And if you enjoyed the video and got some value out of it, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Vocês estão prontos?